Good evening. Welcome to the April 10th, 2018 Mount Vernon School District School Board meeting. Please stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everybody. Before we take roll call tonight, we are testing our software and our broadcasting capabilities for our Thursday night budget presentation. So this evening's meeting is also being broadcast live on Facebook. We're hoping to increase our audience participation and engage more members of our community this way. So I just wanted to make sure everyone's aware that it's now on live stream and Facebook.
Good. Pretty. Roll call.
Yes, ma'am. Trustee Williams. Trustee Russo.
Present.
Trustee Torres.
Present.
Trustee Zamore.
Present.
Trustee McOwen. Trustee Nying. Trustee Jaros.
Here.
Trustee White.
Present.
Trustee Saunders.
Here.
It's present, ma'am.
At this time, we'll take communications from the public.
Good evening once again. The Mount Vernon Board of Education recognizes the critical importance of community discourse and involvement in the education of Mount Vernon's children, and accordingly, members of the public are invited to speak at each regularly scheduled board meeting, subject to the terms of board policy. Speakers must register in advance by no later than 4 p.m. on the date of the meeting by contacting the district clerk in person at 165 North Columbus Avenue, by phone at 914-665-5235, or via email at rmccormack@mtvernoncsd.org. The board welcomes all respectful comment, whether praise or criticism. However, identifying and criticizing specific students, parents, teachers, administrators, or other Mount Vernon education officials or employees is strictly prohibited. Such complaints must be presented and addressed through the proper administrative channels. Each speaker is allotted 3 minutes to speak, with up to 1 additional minute to be used for the speaker to summarize and conclude their remarks. If appropriate, board trustees and/or the superintendent may respond at the conclusion of public comment to the public. Our first speaker tonight is Bishop C. Nathan Edwards.
Bishop C. Nathan Edwards from Friendship Church. First of all, I want to say to this board, thank you for your service that you provide to our community, and thank you for giving us access to the video that you play on a continuous basis. I'm not here, but I watch what's going on. Last meeting, I was very much concerned about some statements that was made as relates to the configurations of the high schools. The statement was that the STEM schools should be more competitive in order to attract more white people in our district. I was taken back when that was said. That is blatant racism. I've been here for 30 years. My children was raised here. When I came to this community 30 years ago, this community was segregated. The people who segregated the community segregated because I guess they felt like that African American children did not live up or could not live up to the expectation of reaching the height of education. However, both of my children went through Mount Vernon school system, and both of them are very successful, each one attaining their bachelor's and master's degree from very prestigious university and went through the school district. I want this board to understand that we will not tolerate any racism or bigotry or any type of biases that will be to all of our children. I am an advocate for all of our children. The second thing I want to say, I heard this too, and it's absurd to me. For 4 years, thank you for providing us a zero increase budget, no increase. However, you cannot run a business every time giving some taxpayers what they're looking for. There are times everything goes up. If you are still providing services at the same level that you provided 4 years ago, guess what have happened? Your costs rise, therefore the service that you're providing to us is at a cheaper rate. but not efficient enough. So I'm saying I have great confidence in what you are doing. I think someone said it's going to be a 1% increase. I think that is very sensible. I was even looking for 1.5, but you came back with a 1% increase. I have very much confidence in this board, and I want to say this. We, as the clergy of this community, is watching everything that's going on. Don't assume because we're not here that we're not watching. Don't assume that we don't have our ears to the community, and we will do whatever we have to do to alert our community when we feel that there is disparity in the distribution of resources to all of our children. We're concerned about the white, the black, the brown, whatever color you are. We want this district to provide good education, and racism, as it was 30 years ago, will not be tolerated. Segregation will not be tolerated in Mount Vernon. This will be an integrated school system, and if we have to march, if we have to protest to ensure that this will happen, we will alert our community. So please, thank you, and continue the good work. Don't become distracted by the namesayers, or by the people who gets on the boards and the people that do what they have to do. Yeah, I said that. Don't let nobody, please, stay the course, because you're doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank you, Bishop
Madam
Edwards.
President, can I ask a question?
Yes.
I was here last week, or last meeting. Can you identify who made that comment? I don't remember
I don't think
that.
that's a good idea. No,
They said you can't identify. Go back to the tape, look at the tape, and I'm not going by hearsay. I keep telling you, thank God for this. You air it every day, 100 times, so I look at it, and I analyze even the body language, what's being said, and I'm telling you, racism will not be tolerated. That was a racist statement. I stayed, my family stayed, and I'm a taxpayer. I do not live in no church part. I've been paying taxes for 25 years, and my children have done well. So please, I'm asking you, don't make this a segregated school district. We want integration. Thank you.
I agree with you that racism cannot be tolerated.
Stan.
Yeah.
I really am interested in looking at that tape again, because...
Stan, we'll watch the tape later.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Reverend Troy DeCohen.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Again, Troy DeCohen, resident of Mount Vernon, taxpayer, own my own home, pastor in the community. It's pretty much here, and again, I want to echo what Bishop Edwards first started out by saying to you, Dr. Hamilton, we thank you for the great vision that you have put forth. To our Madam President, Madam Vice President, we thank you for your leadership on the board. I'm here primarily, as what Bishop Edwards said, and we were kind of alarmed. We didn't feel this meeting today because of what was mentioned. We said him and I will come and we'll just address this. If we have to take it to the next level, we are prepared as clergy, citizens of this community, to always take it to the next level. But I want to kind of piggyback on what Bishop Edwards said, that the statement was made in which y'all have developed the 3 high schools, and one of the high schools would be a STEM, I'm correct?
Right.
High school in which the statement was made. We need to make it as competitive as possible so that when we could draw white children to the school system or to this particular school. I'm not racist, but I am pro my people. And when it comes to the point of where we are now looking to go 30 years back, where people are bold enough, and that's the craziness. When people are so bold, especially in this era of Trump, to feel that they can say whatever they want without consequence, something is wrong. And especially when it's germane to the development and growth of our children. Mount Vernon is one community. White, black, Hispanic, Portuguese, various other nationalities. We're one community. And the service has to be across board for everybody equal. As you know, when you developed the bond, we were here to kind of work with you, and we brought it to the churches, the community, saying when the bond was issued that it was going to be fair and equitable, and the schools in the south side would receive the same benefits that the schools in the north side. And that hasn't, that's wavering. You know, because some of the schools have, you know, we still upset about Pennington. Here, Pennington, the cafeteria was not long ago built, and now we build a new cafeteria. You know, some of the stuff still isn't right. And it can't be white against black. Not in our community. And if we lean to anyone or any group, and I'm adamant about that, any group that tries to divide, that tries to pull resources out of the children that need it the most, we're going to have personal problems. It's not just going to be a meeting. It'll be other problems. Because if we got to fight for our children, we're prepared to do it. My youngest daughter, as you know, she goes to the school system here. I fight for that. And she's not going to get less than any other child in the school district. And I would guarantee that. You know, so please, I commend the board, the great work that you're doing. I commend the efforts under your leadership, Dr. Hamilton, for the vision that you have set forth. The clergy of this community, as you know, we support you. You know, we're here to stand with you, but we will not tolerate a racist or racist groups to come and try to make this community, the north side, just to be for white children, everything on the south side, black children get less. There's no such thing. Not here, not now. And if we got to go to the street, we go to the street. We got to fill this room up and do what we have to do. We'll do that too. So please understand that. Again, we're here for support, to support the board in moving forth the vision. Not here to chastise, to criticize, but especially at least for us to be cognizant of what people say and the agendas that they present. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Reverend Cohen.
May I make a comment, please?
Sure.
Reverend Cohen, I would
Mr.
invite...
Rose, I'm sorry, your microphone's not on.
Sorry. I would invite you to come to the bond meetings on Thursday mornings at 7:30 to see exactly what's happening. Tuesday mornings, to see exactly what's happening with the bond money. And we have the architects there and many of the people that are administering the bond, and there are specific reasons. You talked about the cafeteria at Pennington, and there were reasons why it was taken down. I just invite you to come to any of those meetings so that you could get some clarity.
Right. Well, you know, I was clear on it because I had participated, especially in the beginning. I had participated as well when monies were diverted to do other stuff, and which was exposed. Mm-hmm. Don't have me please go back to other conversations. This won't be the forum for that. We are mindful of how money was spent. Mm-hmm. We are. And so I'm not being confrontational with you. I'm just saying we're very mindful and looked at every dollar. Mm-hmm. And saw a disparity.
Thank you.
I did, so thank you.
Our next speaker is Thomas Keller.
Good evening. Each and every one of you trustees should read this. This is not this year's because you haven't seen it yet, and Mr. Silva doesn't give it out to the Budget Committee to bring home. This is 40 pages. Before you vote on the budget next week, please read this, all 9 of you trustees. If you have any questions, Mr. Silva will answer them. Okay. Whether it's 3 years or 4 years on the 0% tax levy, let's keep it going. And as far as the budget not increasing, the tax levy hasn't increased. Taxes might have because we don't control assessments. And we can't even get an assessment number from the assessor, even though there's 10 years of actual, from June 1 of last year till April 1st of this year. DeBellis used to give us an estimated number. The budget's gone up from 207 to 225, 229, 238, 246, and they're proposing 252. We have $2 million of foundation aid, that's basic aid. Mr. Silva tells me the other aid, the targeted aid, the transportation, special ed, you have to spend to get it, okay. This is the audited statement. You ought to read this too. June 30th, last fiscal year. The unassigned balance, 11.2 million. Now, people complain, the governor says you can't keep more than 4% of fund balance as a percentage of the budget because you're overtaxing people. We're over 4%. And Judith Johnson, to justify her budget increases, oh, Mr. Cuomo and the legislature, they're going to take away our money. No district has ever lost money because they were over 4%. Anyway, 11.2. If you're going to do 252, make up the difference with the fund balance. And if you don't want to do that, don't go to 252. Go to 250. Take a portion of the fund balance. And start going over. There are principals, assistant principals, non-union people that get money in the afternoon to run programs, to register people. They're padding their pension. You got 4 contracts you're negotiating, I think, now. Principals and assistant principals, 7:30 to 5:30. No extra money for running after-school programs or registering people. I've said this for years. We need a 2-tier rate schedule for teachers. New teachers takes 25 years to get to maximum, as opposed to 15 years, like it is now. So there's ways to cut things if you look hard enough. And this is a great opportunity with budget negotiations going on. And the trustees should really be on top of these negotiations. Management is negotiating these. You're our stock, you represent us. The shareholders are the property owners. General Motors, when they win the tank, management gave out juicy contracts to the unions, and then whatever the unions got, non-union management got. The board of directors at GM didn't do their job. I hope you guys do your job. I hope it's a 9-0 vote next Tuesday for a 0% tax levy. Thank you.
Our final speaker is Jeff Monroe. That concludes public speaking.
Thank you, public. Right now, we'll go to superintendent's report.
Yes, good evening, all. I will actually be doing the budget presentation this evening from the floor, and that will be my budget presentation. And as I make my way there, the chair of our budget committee, Mrs. Torres, will just give an overview, and then I'll get into the meat and potatoes with the administrative team.
Okay. So I'm going to give my budget committee report, and I just want to let it...
Pull your mic close to you.
Is it on? Hello? Okay, I think you can hear me. All right. So the Budget Committee met last Friday during the spring break to review the proposed budget for the 2018-2019 fiscal year. Next year's budget will be impacted by the implementation of several components of the 2020 vision, specifically the district's reconfiguration to schools that offer classes from all-day pre-K through 8th grade. While a large portion of expenses in the budget are attributable to salaries and benefits, there are specific cost drivers for next year. Included among these are the addition of all-day pre-K, from half-day pre-K, which necessitates the hiring of additional staff dedicated to the pre-K program to provide instruction and coverage, the purchase of instructional materials, supplies, furniture, and equipment, and the attendant cost of operating an all-day pre-K program. We are also expecting an increase in the number of students who will be enrolled in the pre-K program next year as well, further increasing our expenses. Other factors, such as the timely expiration of certain grants, the conversion of Mandela to a STEAM school, coupled with unexpected and unplanned yet mandatory improvements to aging and neglected facilities, likewise will impact our budget. The bond covers improvements to the district's facilities, but we know that the total amount of the bond was insufficient to address the extensive repairs summarized in the building conditions survey. And urgent situations arise which must be addressed and ultimately alter even the most diligently planned budgets. On the revenue side, we anticipate amounts from property taxes, local sources, federal and state aid. I won't get into the specifics of that, as I will let Dr. Hamilton provide that information. But all of the revenue, our proposed budget actually will amount to approximately $251,900,000 for next year. We are looking at a increase of approximately 2.3% in the district's overall operating budget, which is actually a decrease from last year's budget increase of 3.11%. I just wanted to talk about the impact of the budget on our property taxes. During the initial bond presentations in the spring of 2016, the district clearly informed members of the Mount Vernon community that the bond, if passed, would be paid back over a period of years with income derived from periodic guaranteed increases, graduated increases in the school-based property tax. The proposed tax schedules contemplated an initial tax of $70 per $1,000 of assessed property value in year 4 of the bond. However, there have not been any tax increases during the first 4 years of the bond due to the efficiency of the district's budgeting. As a result of the improved business practices in the district, efficiency measures, and an increased fund balance, the district has received a bond rating of A, its highest bond rating in over 20 years. Yet this rating could conceivably be much higher. Last year, the district used monies from the fund balance to offset payments for the bond. However, this year, the bond payments will be derived from a property tax increase as originally disclosed in 2016 and as planned. There will be a tax increase of approximately 0.89%, which equals $6.82 per $1,000 of assessed property value. This increase is lower than expected. Not only will this increase allow the district to preserve its fund balance, but it will also positively affect the district's credit rating and in turn allow the district to borrow funds at even more favorable rates in the future. With that, I'll turn to Dr. Hamilton to present the budget for next year.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Torres.
Thank you, Ms.
You're welcome.
Torres.
So good evening, ladies and gentlemen, members of the public, and of course, members of the Board of Trustees. This evening, I'm proud to present the preliminary 2018-2019 fiscal plan for academic excellence. So of course, I need to acknowledge the people with whom we share the vision and who helped create that, and those are the members of our Board of Trustees who are present this evening. And to acknowledge the members of our Board of Trustees and members of our public who also served on the Budget Committee. They are, of course, our Chair, Ms. Arlene Torres, Wanda White, Tom Keller, Rick Powers, and Mr. Lenny Sauver were members of the Budget Committee. As with everything that we do, we want to make certain that our district vision statement and mission statements are at the forefront of our planning. The Mount Vernon City School District will be recognized as a high-quality educational system where all students receive a rigorous education prepared to be college and career ready and develop the necessary skills to compete in a global society. In November, the board adopted 4 key goals that have really been the driving force for creating this fiscal plan for academic excellence. Those goals center around the successful implementation of the 2020 vision, and these goals were updated in November to reflect our progress over the previous 3 years. Many of those goals or components of those goals were accomplished. Board members, you have at your place this evening the status report on those board goals from the adoption to now relative to the work that we have completed in order to satisfy the indicators of success. But the goals center around the successful implementation of the 2020 vision, which includes the district reconfiguration to a pre-K-8 model, the creation of 3 high schools of excellence to promote academic achievement through innovative whole school reform, which is a collection of best practices developed in research around the country, to assess and evaluate existing programs to determine whether or not we are appropriately measuring student progress, again centered around all students, ensuring the successful implementation of the bond, which our community has been very clear about, making certain that those bonds are appropriately allocated, including the design for buildings, facilities, and the infrastructure around technology. And lastly, to improve and enhance our communication and partnerships with community networks, including our CBOs, businesses, and building stronger communities. So the executive summary, which our chairperson really did an excellent job with highlighting, focuses around 3 key areas. One is to look very carefully at what went into the budget process, but to make sure that those things that were included in the budget were in fact aligned with the board goals. And I'll talk to you a little more about OEE, or Orchestrating Effective Effort, which is the process we look at during the budget preparation process to determine whether or not those items that we are considering for the budget in fact are related to the board goals. Otherwise, the misalignment would suggest that perhaps that is not the most appropriate way to spend precious resources. Also, during the 18-19 budgeting process, our spending plan grows programs, retains staff, and ensures a focus on student achievement, while at the same time minimally increasing the tax levy, as so eloquently articulated by Mrs. Torres. The plan includes all contractual obligations, health benefit costs, supports for pre-K through 8 reconfiguration, looking at the cost that will impact us this year on the current and previous bonds, planning and preparation for onboarding the 3 theme-based high schools, improving professional development, which we'll talk about a little later on, creating system for increased accountability and efficiency, and of course, raising expectations for staff and students through best practices. The reason this professional development is so important is because as we roll our district forward and we're looking at reconfiguring our district or transforming our district starting as early as pre-K all the way up through high school, we can't just assume that teachers are going to have the skill sets necessary to make the transition. So the professional development that we are focused on really looks at training teachers so that they are appropriately credentialed and have a degree of expertise so that they will be able to deliver the kinds of results that are in alignment with the board goals and the district mission statement. So one of the things that we want to do as Dr. Gorman comes up is to talk to you about, are our tax dollars working? So part of the board goals were to look specifically at what programs were yielding results and which programs were not. And those programs that were not as successful as we wanted them to be or needed further implementation, or to assess whether or not it was being implemented with fidelity, we did an assessment to determine whether or not we wanted to continue those programs. And so this is some of the data that tells us that we are in fact on the right course.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. So we really have a focus on literacy and numeracy and mathematics and graduation rates, and that's a lot of that is bound by New York State Education Department. And so one of the indicators that is commonly used is the performance index. And so when we got here in 2013, 14, we started in our reform efforts. And so the performance index is a number that really identifies the growth in between what's really going on. So in other words, proficiency is a 3, advanced proficiency is a 4, a 2 is less than proficient, and a 1 is non-proficient. The performance index talks about the calculations within those numbers, because there's growth. If you're at the bottom of a 2 and you grow to a mid-2, that's not always reflected in getting to the proficient rate. So the proficiency performance index talks about that movement internally, and as you can see in literacy over the last 3 years, it has been trending upwards, and we are moving in the right direction with the implementation of new programs, balanced literacy, focus on vocabulary, using data to inform our instruction, planning and preparation, and best instructional and curricular practices. And so subsequently, what you've seen over the last couple of years has been an increase in proficiency rates. And so what you see here is a combination of level 3 and 4. And while we're not at the standard that we know we need to achieve, you're seeing trending, legitimate trending in a positive direction based on our practices. And actually, if you take a look here, we are looking at 15% over a 3-year period. And so you're seeing those incremental movements in literacy. In mathematics, the same performance index holds true, and there are different focuses in different grades on what our kids should know, what they should understand, and what they should be able to do. And you'll see that indice moving, but what's really neat to see is that it starts to really correlate to the infusion of our new math program called Envisions 2.0. And so that was started to be adopted in the 15-16 school year. And we've seen a nice spike up last year, and we expect another spike up this year. And so as we move to graduation rates in the high school, for the first time since the beginning of the inception of the accountability rate, or the AYP, all of our high schools have made AYP for all subgroups. And when we got here 3 years ago, we inherited in June a 48% graduation rate, less than 50%, and we are trending up 33% in 3 years. And while we're not where we want to be yet, we are definitely moving in the right direction. And these numbers are right off of this.
I want to go back to a second to this particular chart. Jeff, don't leave yet. Because I think it is really important as we talk about all children, what that means. It's really not, we're not talking about just black children or white children. We're talking about the various subgroups, which includes children who are African American, Hispanic, students with disability, and economically disadvantaged, and recognizing that many of our students fall in multiple categories in these various subgroups. So to be able to proudly say, for the first time since the federal government has been retaining this data, we've been able to satisfy AYP in all of these 5 indicators, is something that the teaching staff and the leadership in the district, principals in particular, should be commended for relative to accomplishing this huge landmark. This is another slide that we are particularly proud of. We inherited a district that had, what was it, 107?
Outstanding compliance issues.
107 non-compliance issues in the 2008, that started in the 2008-2009 school year.
Okay, so recently, Dr. Hamilton received a letter from the New York State Education, or 3 letters from the New York State Education Department, indicating that we have cleared all of the compliance issues that we arrived to. So since 2008, the district was not able to come into compliance with all of the special education matters. And as you can see, we worked very hard to clean up the compliance issues.
So for the first time since 2008, we are, in terms of our non-compliance issues with special education, we have a tabula rosa, a clean slate. Dr. Walden will talk a little bit about our progress with our non-compliance status as it relates to cleaning up data on our English language learners.
Thank you. And as we also celebrate the work of students with disabilities, likewise, our English language learners have made considerable progress. The New York State Office of Bilingual Education and World Languages actually imposed a corrective action plan, which lasts 3 years on the district, and it actually closed. It addressed many violations, and I'm so excited to inform everyone through the concerted efforts of the Office of Curriculum and Instruction and School Improvement. There has been targeted support, creating transitional bilingual programs, targeted professional development, and that corrective action plan has successfully closed. So we are in full compliance.
Great.
So what is OEE, Orchestrating Effective Effort? This is a tool that you've heard me talk about in previous board presentations about how well we are able to make decisions about what makes the budget and which items don't. Our principals, our directors, our department leaders have the responsibility of coming in and defending their budget, whereby they present their data, they request items, personnel, and other things that are their utopia. What do I need to be able to successfully operate my school? What OEE does is it gives us a side-by-side look at whether or not what principals are requesting match the data, and whether or not that data is aligned with board goals. So by way of an example, a principal may say to me, I'd like to have a math coach in my building, for example. And we look at the data and we will say, well, your second and third graders are doing particularly well in mathematics, but your fifth graders are not. So maybe it's not about adding more people on, but a better utilization of the people that you have. So how do you take those best practices that are in place in your earlier grades and cross-pollinate them to your later grades? So the answer is no, you can't have a math coach, but we'll help you restructure your staffing so that you can generate those kinds of results. And that takes us back to our fiscal responsibility as it relates to board goals. So some examples of some things that were eliminated from the budget, and the only reason I share this information with you is so that you really get a bird's eye view of what happens during the budget defense rounds and how we were able to expand programs, continue services for our students, and maintain a budget in the manner in which we have. So additional staff for math and literacy coaches and STEAM have been cut back in order to roll out the world language in addition to Spanish. So there were, we started the budget process, the first budget defense rounds, we had a request for 44 new staff members that obviously didn't make the cut. Technology infrastructure, we decided that we would look very carefully at how to programmatically and systematically improve our technology infrastructure. Instead of a full K through 6 rollout on the new science program, we cut that back and decided that for this year, or for the 18-19 school year, we would look specifically at grades 3 through 6 and then roll it out in 2 phases. We're looking at a reduction in private school tuition for special education students and providing services in-house that reduce the number of students that are in out-of-district placements and providing those services in-house, where we get to save substantially on special education transportation costs. We've looked at how do we reposition ourselves in terms of how we order textbooks, and are there digital versions of these textbooks that are available? What is our renewal cycle on textbooks? A reduction in energy costs, installing energy efficient lights in our buildings, light switches that turn off, and we're looking at another recommendation that I may ultimately make to the board in terms of some energy efficiencies a little later on. And our paper consumption in the district is down considerably as we have relied more on technology to communicate and generate reports. So very specifically, when we look at the board goals, we are looking at some very key items. We will be rolling out full-day pre-K in all schools and expanding our partnerships with our community-based organizations. We are onboarding a pre-K director. This is such an important initiative that we do need someone whose responsibilities are catered specifically to pre-K instruction and someone who has that knowledge and background. We're looking at standardizing district-wide programs and resources to support the reconfiguration of pre-K through 8. So we are gradually adding on 7th and 8th grade in the following schools. So Columbus, Grimes, Holmes, Lincoln, and Parker schools will keep their current 6th graders, and they will become 7th graders next year. And then, of course, the following year, the goal will be to keep those 7th graders so that they will be 8th graders, and those schools that are not listed there will then add grade 7 the following year. We're looking at the last 3 years for the implementation of Envisions, the Journey Math program, the Journey's Balanced Literacy Initiative, and our partnership with Houghton Mifflin. We'll also be bringing on, as you know, we have been working very closely with Discovery for our STEAM Academy, and we're creating a feeder program into the STEAM High School. So in addition to working with bringing the STEAM High School on board next year, currently known as A.B. Davis, we're also looking at what a feeder program would look like. So we are building a cadre of youngsters so that each year the school becomes more and more competitive, because we have then provided students the prerequisites they need in order to be competitive in that kind of environment, where the emphasis on high-level math and inquiry-based learning is at the forefront. And we have also expanded experiences at our elementary and secondary schools to ensure that our youngsters have after-school activities like chess, newspaper, the Kiwanis Club, and Habitat for Humanity, because we know that social service and civic responsibility is not something that you can teach just out of a textbook, but by providing students with hands-on real experiences. The 3 theme-based high schools will, of course, include the Performing Arts School, the Magnet School, and Mount Vernon High School will be a comprehensive building, which will include an international baccalaureate program. We have already started that application process. We'll be expanding course offerings at Mount Vernon High School to include cosmetology, TV production, print production, and the other programs are listed there for your review. This will be on the website as well after this board presentation, and a full rollout during the following year with work in the budgeted areas that we deem as necessary. The STEAM Academy will include an engineering program that is focused on Project Lead the Way, digital tech books, and STEAM video, along with 3D printers and an offering in robotics. And the Performing Arts School will continue to expand. And of course, associated with that program is the cost to purchase the rights to certain materials that our students are using, whether it's music, scripts, or costume design, trademark items that we have to secure in the appropriate licensing fees. Now, the program, when we started it 3 years ago, was funded by a grant. We knew that grant was going to expire, and we are now absorbing the cost of some of those programs, the cost for operation of that program in the general operating budget. Ken Silver? Thank you.
Good evening. One of the areas that we are focusing on for next year is facilities and safety. And in facilities, we're going to be focusing on the Williams School restoration. We're going to be doing bathrooms there. We're doing the auditorium renovation, new ceiling, air conditioning, exit lights, emergency lights.
Fix that air conditioning. The whole building is not being air conditioned.
Oh, just,
Thank you. We're doing renovation of the front concrete entrance, the handicap ramp, replacement of treads in the stairwells. We will also be doing, not on this chart, but we'll be doing several $100,000 in building condition repairs in all the buildings. We're going to be repairing or renovating the culinary arts kitchen at Mount Vernon High School. We're going to be doing the Columbus Auditorium this coming year. We're going to be continuing abatement, landscaping, beautification, improving the signage, and we're going to be starting the final phase of the pool restoration, which will be the balcony repairs and restoration this coming year.
So one of the things that we are hearing from our community loud and clearly, and our data suggested as well, is that we have identified a cadre of students who meet the definition of gifted and talented. And right now, we have not employed enough teacher to appropriately service all of these youngsters. So this fiscal plan for academic excellence also includes the expansion of Atlas, which is our gifted and talented program. It includes funds to support the onboarding and expansion of several software and licensing programs that help the district to be more efficient and effective, centering around a learning management system, Schoology, Voyager strategic reading program, iReady, Plato, Avid. Avid is yielding very favorable results. I am a huge supporter of Avid, but I have been very clear that if it does not yield positive results, we would eliminate it from the budget. And I'm very proud to say that the Avid team has been very successful in being able to demonstrate that Avid has generated tremendous results, not just academically, but in terms of student confidence and student self-esteem and their capacity to be able to feel as though they have the necessary prerequisites to take advanced level courses. We're also looking at a system that will help us improve how we service our special needs students, and School Do, which is our program that manages facility usage. We are expanding our partnership with Microsoft and district expansion for growth around some of the fundamental programs that they offer us. Scholastic, which has been a huge supporter and partner in our district through family and community engagement. In fact, I'll be talking, I'll talk about it now. We are doing a Distinguished Teacher of the Year award this Saturday. This is the Year of the Teacher. We have over 50 nominees. Scholastic was one of our largest donors in order to make that event happen. We are looking to expand technology access to our students and our teachers by having more devices in the classroom, and those devices will fluctuate between laptops and iPads and other tablet-type devices so that there is greater access. We are looking to continue to support our teachers and bringing in consultants that have been very successful with helping us identify those best practices that remove the remaining priority and focus schools from the list and continued growth. And of course, increasing parent workshops, which we also find attendance improving, and we also find that parents are finding it very useful in terms of how they can partner with the school and the home. So, all that's nice stuff, but let's get to the nitty-gritty, and that is, what does it cost? What does it look like on my tax bill? And what are some of those things that are beyond our control? Those mandates that are I'll use the word imposed, and I don't mean that as in a negative way, but those things that are imposed upon us by the state, that are mandated things that are absorbed in our budget. And then you'll be able to see very specifically how much of our budget is allocated to instructional programs and what's allocated to other items. Mr. Silver?
So this slide shows the distribution of revenue, property tax, state aid, other revenues. That pretty much stays the same from year to year. As the budget goes up slightly, the revenue goes up slightly. So the new budget will be $251,979,860. Salaries instruction amount to over 93% of that budget. The balance of it is for facilities. Things that we have to do, we have no choice about it, are the charter schools we're required to provide for. Our health insurance is going up 3.3%. We consider that to be a very small increase. Social Security is going up next year as the base goes up. And our foundation aid has a set-aside, even though we got $2 million in additional foundation aid, which is based on pupils, there is a set-aside of $1.2 million to be used for community school programs. So those mandates amount to about $60 million.
So that, in essence, is about those mandates, and I'm just doing the math quickly in my head, is about what, 40? Say it again? 40 some odd percent of our budget then?
Up to 25%, a little less than
Of
25%.
256?
Yes.
Okay, 250. Okay.
So our state aid is going up about $2 million, and foundation aid, all the other aids that are based on our spending, and so the only thing we really look at is the foundation aid increase. We were disappointed that the governor's proposal was only slightly increased by the legislatures, and so we did not get what we had hoped we would get. We got about a 2.95 increase in our foundation aid. The fund balance applied, we started out with a little over $11 million in our fund balance. The board then appropriated $1,350,000 to offset certiorari's, which brought us down to the 4%. Then we have now taken $1.9 million from the fund balance, from the unrestricted fund balance, to be used to offset taxes. So we are now at $8 million after this budget of unrestricted fund balance, not the 4% we would like, but we do expect that unused money at the end of the year will supplement and raise back up the fund balance to near the maximum allowed. The assessed values of the property, the assessment, it's about $10,378 for the average property. The $6.82 per month tax increase speaks to that type of house. In speaking with the assessor's office, we find that most of the homes are in the $16,000 assessment area, $16,000 to $18,000 assessment area, with very few much more than that. So it would be about $75 to $80 a year increase for the taxes for the average homeowner, and possibly $120 for a house assessed at more. But I would remind you that this is the first time since this administration has been here that there's been any increase in taxes at all. So our tax levy history, we go back to when this administration started in the 14-15 year, it was $134 million. It's now $135 million. It's gone up $1.2 million in all this time in 5 years. And this speaks to the budget increases. Last year, the budget increase was $7.4 million. This year, it's $5.8 million. As Chairman Torres mentioned before, the budget increase was 3.1% last year. This year, it's 2.36%. A very, very small increase in the budget because of our spending, being very careful on our spending. So some of the things we've done to keep the costs down are, one of the things is we are rebidding all of our transportation contracts, and we also gotten rerouting software so that we can more efficiently route the buses and have better transportation contracts. We have also increased the use of our state contracts for providing services, goods, construction work for us. We have increased our work with BOCES when we get BOCES aid, and so we do very well by taking more advantage of the shared services. We are about to embark on a new state contract for natural gas, which will reduce the costs substantially in the current year. And as was mentioned earlier, our bond rating increase allows us to borrow at a lower rate.
So as a taxpayer, ultimately, and Mr. Silver already spoke to this, on the average assessed home, which is about $10,300, we anticipate that it will cost you about $6.82 a month. Our proposed budget represents a 0.89 or 0.90% increase on the tax levy for this year. One of the challenges that we have with working with the budget is trying to make certain that we maintain the appropriate balance between what we hear from parents, our responsibility, of course, as stewards over the taxpayer dollars, and our effort to become more competitive with surrounding schools and communities, and make certain that our students have the experiences that will make them eligible for college seats. And so when we look at our budget summary, one of the things that I am extremely proud of in this budget is we are pioneers in bringing in 3-year-old pre-K program, 4-year-old pre-K program, and we will see the benefit of this early front-load educational approach in years to come. This will outlive all of us in terms of our emphasis and our commitment to providing pre-K education for all eligible students in our universe. This also has a significant cost-saving factor to parents, because often parents have communicated that I am unable to get a job when my 4-year-old is in or 5-year-old is in a half-day program, and I don't have the flexibility of being able to either pick that youngster up in the morning when the morning program is over, or vice versa. And this now gives me the opportunity to have a program that is a structured program, not a babysitting program. I can resume full-time employment, and I'm not paying $1,200, $1,300 a month for childcare. So this is significant for our community. The reconfiguration of our elementary schools to pre-K-8 schools and the phase-in, again, as mentioned earlier, we anticipate once Pennington comes online, and we will face a redistricting at some point in the next year or two, where we will bring the current Mandela building online, and at that point we anticipate that all of our buildings will be pre-K through 8. Onboarding the 3 theme-based high schools and our community engagement efforts and our expanded partnerships. Co-curricular instructional programs and practices are essential in order for our students to not just get the academics, but the social aspects associated with a high school and elementary and middle school experience. Top-notch professional development. We have seen positive results from the work we have done with our partners with Discovery, as well as Scholastic and so many of the other service providers, in addition to the train-the-train model that we have implemented in our district. That has become a model that other districts are looking for as well. We have already identified a model school. Rebecca Turner has become our model school, our demonstration site, where we will take the practices that have yielded such positive results at Rebecca Turner and cross-pollinate that throughout the district so that all of our schools become candidates as reward schools over time. Expanding the gifted and talented program and bringing new programs on board. So at the end of the day, the question is, why should I support this budget as a taxpayer? Well, you should support this budget as a taxpayer because this budget is about the future of Mount Vernon. This budget is about making certain that every child that is in our encatchment has the opportunity to be successful. Many of our students I attended a meeting today at Lehman College with former Commissioner King, and one of the things we talked about was how well are we preparing our children for the future, and how are we attracting people into our profession who are interested in being educators. And one of the things that we have to be very mindful of is that our children are entering the workforce with so much college debt that it is not making certain professions attractive for them. What this budget does is it presents for you opportunities for our students to be more competitive for college scholarships, to be able to enter school without the necessary 2 years pre-junior college that we call junior college, community college experience now, and then still have to do 4 years on top of that. And it also gives them an opportunity to not just be successful with entering college, but entering college and being able to have the skill set necessary to complete that college degree. By doing that, we change their employability, we change the outlook for this community, and we systematically combat the conditions of poverty that many of our children fall prey to and limits their capacity to be able to be functioning citizens in a manner that contributes to our society and our democracy. So we have spent a lot of time, and I have to take a moment to thank the people who have served on the committee. If you would just stand up, Mr. Powers, Mr. Keller, Ms. Perez, who am I missing, Kim? Wanda White. Thank you for that. To the administrative body for working over the weekends with the budget defense rounds that have taken hours and hours to complete. If you would just stand as well, I appreciate you. You know who you are, stand up. Come on, come on. And the reason I think it's important to acknowledge these people is because this process has been a very arduous one that has taken, so imagine creating this process, evaluating and assessing programs, still operating a school district, and all the things that go along with that. And I just want to say publicly how much I appreciate all of you for your commitment and dedication to our district and to our children. And most importantly, I present to the Board of Trustees this fiscal plan for educational academic excellence that I am very proud to say I think is extremely responsible and has gone through a process that has been well vetted. So with that in mind, I want to close with just a couple of quick comments and then open it to board trustees if you have questions. First of all, we are streaming live tonight on Facebook just as a practice because we are doing what I think is a very innovative approach. And on Thursday evening at 6:00 p.m., we will be doing a budget presentation on Facebook Live with the hope of reaching more parents. One of the things we know about technology in the world that we live in today is people want the information to come to them. They don't want to come out for the information. So rather than do these shows where we go out to 6, 7, 8 different places and we have the same 6 people, we are doing a Facebook Live presentation and answering questions live on Facebook. So that's a very innovative approach that I am hopeful. We've advertised it. You can help us spread the word as well. And because of the construction at some of our schools, some of our polling sites will be changed. Mandela, as you know, is offline due to the building being remodeled. So those folks who would generally vote at Mandela will be voting at Hamilton. Signage will go up as early as next week. Those folks who generally vote at Pennington will be voting at Mount Vernon High School. The adoption, I will be asking the board at the next board meeting on April 17th to adopt the final budget, and then of course, board elections will be on May 15th. So with that said, I'd be glad to answer any question board members have, or I can certainly entertain them at our next meeting if you need more time to digest.
I have a few questions.
I have one.
One being, many here.
Mr. Zamore?
Silver.
Mr. Zamore, would you please turn your microphone on?
Sure.
Thank you, sir.
I guess Mr. Silver would best be able to address this, but regarding the fund balance, what would be the percentage left of the fund balance if it's not 4%?
So about 3.5, a little less than 3.5%.
About 3.5?
Yes.
Okay. And by law, does the state have a minimum?
No.
Okay.
the maximum.
But the maximum is 4%?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we're not that far off. Do you know what the average and, let's say, surrounding schools may be in the county?
No, I do not. The question is, that is not available online. We would have to do a survey of that. No, we do not have that. But we do know that in years past, we had no fund balance and
Right.
have over the years been able to get up to the maximum allowed.
Okay. All right, fantastic. It would be good to know what the other school districts are running roughly, or if they have any, if they usually are at the maximum. And especially, I guess, after their budgets are passed, the budgets are public, and so we could see what their line balances are, and we could come up with the average ourselves. All right. Sorry, I just wrote all these questions on the respective pages here. Another one is a house that's assessed at roughly the highest amount according to the assessment values of $16,000. What would be roughly the retail market value of a house that's assessed at $16,000 on the high side?
We do know that the high side of the assessments, the highest of the assessments, is about $30,000. That is on the Bronxville border. And we know that the ones that are in the 16 range are all the houses that are, let's say, in Devonia, in the Pennington area, and so those vary widely, but several $100,000. But according to the assessor from yesterday, we would be looking at the $16,000 to $20,000 assessment range in that area. So I would assume somewhere in the $500,000, $600,000 range. So we did not get, as Mr. Keller's asking about a different area, but the assessor just spoke to the area that she said the average is just, not the average, but the assessments in the Pennington area is about half again what the average is. So it's not really a bell curve. It's pretty even around the 10,000.
Right. So somewhere around $500,000 for the higher of the averages that were used, around 16 to 20,000. Okay, I mean, I don't live in the Pennington area, but I don't know of any homes in my neighborhood that are under $500,000. But, all right, for that to be an average, I just don't see how that works. But
No, the 10,000 is the average.
I'm sorry, the average on the high side.
Right,
So
so-
10,000 to be the average, I could probably see that because the population of homes in terms of the density is higher as you go further south. Okay. The other thing is that, what is the cost per student right now in Mount Vernon, in the Mount Vernon schools? Do we know what that is? I know our cost per student, let's say, and not the taxes levied to the taxpayers, but altogether with state aid, so on and so forth. What's the average of the district right now?
I mean, with all
Right,
revenue.
do you anticipate with this budget for 2018, 2019?
I'm sorry, say your question again, I'm sorry. Are you
The
including-
average cost per student for the 2018-19 budget?
It depends on how you measure it, because we know that.
Just the straight math, so the full budget divided by the amount of students in the district.
But we can't use that. We have to use the charter school students as well, all the students that go to private placements, BOCES
fine.
placements. So a simple way would be to take the budget, divide it by 8,000. No, you can't divide it by 8,000. You'd have to divide it by probably 85 or 8,800 kids, including all the kids that were out. So it's somewhere in the,
Special ed numbers.
so somewhere in the area of $30,000 if you did it that way.
Okay.
And that computes actually to what a charter school student costs that is classified. It's about $30,000.
Sure.
And that is a computed figure from the state.
And do we know what some of the neighboring schools in Westchester, the public school districts, Yonkers, New Rochelle, Bronxville, Pelham, do we know what their averages are?
We are right now doing a study of that was asked by the Budget Committee the other day. We know that our classified rate is higher than all of the other school districts in this area, and therefore our rate per pupil is going to be more because of the costs of tuition. We spent some $40 million on classified kids, plus their transportation, and we also pay for tuition beyond that. So we know that our costs are higher, our costs in district are higher because we have teaching assistants that are in those classes where there's two adults in the classroom. So our costs are far higher than everybody else, but we are doing a study of that right now to look at current figures based on budgets that are just coming available now.
Can I just ask a related question?
Sure, go ahead.
In preparing the budget, what were the assumptions made in terms of enrollment? And how do those square with the enrollment trends? Because we've already started open enrollment at the schools, and I'm just wondering, what is the projection for enrollment next year versus this year, and how does that play into the assumptions that were made?
So with the exception of kindergarten, we use current numbers and we roll them up. So first grader becomes a second grader becomes a third grader, and then we look at what our average number of transfer ins and outs are, and we try to make allocations for those youngsters. So that number, that actually is how the budget process begins. We create that data for the principals, and they are then given the number of teachers that they are going to have based on the number of sections that we've identified. And again, we anticipate that sometimes the kindergarten numbers fluctuate, sometimes even first grade numbers fluctuate, because some of those youngsters are not necessarily in our kindergarten program. And the preschool youngsters who enter kindergarten, who are not a part of our program, for example, that's another unknown. So with those exceptions, the foundation upon which the budget is built is looking at simply rolling over the current numbers, adding and subtracting our net based on our average enrollment of transfer ins and outs.
Right, and
And we are a very transient district.
Yeah, exactly, and I wonder, this is one of the things I wrote down, I'm just concerned that I want to make sure we're not underestimating our enrollment, because I know we have, number one, we have more pre-K programs opening, right? Like you said, with a totally unknown, right now, number of new schoolers coming in. We have, thankfully, because of the progress that has been made in the district, we have less attrition. So we are seeing less people leaving,
Right.
which was the whole goal of these changes. So it's good, but it means our numbers are getting higher. And like you said, the just with all the shuffles, I just don't know.
It could happen, and I think every superintendent would be going through the same process. You look at your average, you look at your trends, and you anticipate some of those unknowns. And we do have capacity in classrooms. We obviously don't want 30 kids in a classroom if we can avoid it. So we've made certain that we've capped classes and put sections in place that would make accommodations for that kind of growth if it should happen.
Good? Okay. So just to continue on the point that I want to make here. So we have one of the highest costs per student in Westchester County. We have also some of the lowest property values in Westchester County, which therefore causes our tax rate to be higher than any district in Westchester County. We also have, on average, the lowest incomes per capita than any other district in Westchester County. And yet, we have some of the lowest academic scores than almost any other district in Westchester County. And therefore, I'm always troubled by tax increases because I feel that it disproportionately, targets the citizens of the community who could least afford it, which are always the senior citizens, right? And we're not really necessarily getting increased value for the money that we're spending, not yet. And I do see a time in the future where it's coming, and I really believe that it will. I believe we've embarked on a plan really to bring value back to the community, to encourage increased property values, to encourage more rigor in the system so that it would attract people of all colors to come back into the district. So you wouldn't necessarily have just a white flight, but you also wouldn't have a bright flight any longer, and then we'd attract everyone of color or social economic status to come back into the district. However, we're not there yet. So the thing about fixed income is that it's fixed, right? They don't call it variable income. They call it fixed income. So all senior citizens who are living here are living on fixed income. So when you increase, let's say, their taxes, even if it's by $120 a year, this might seem a small amount to you, but that means they have to do with less of either paying a utility bill, less of maybe shopping for food or groceries, whatever it may be. So as trivial as it may seem to us, who are earners, to fixed income citizens, it's something. Now, I understand also that prices increase and costs go up. I really have, I studied economics. I was an economics major, and I really don't remember a time in the history of this country where actually, CPI went down, right? Consumer Price Index is always rising. However, being on this board for the past 3 years and being in the position of leadership and seeing, pretty much reading through a lot of the paperwork in depth, I know, not just simply conjecture, I know that there's a lot of places that we could be saving even more money, and I could get into that later, but we really have not dived too much into that. The other thing, another simple place is volunteerism. We don't have a mechanism to take in the amount of volunteers who wish to volunteer throughout the district that would, again, save us probably a lot of money. So you're talking about the tax increase of 0.89%. How much money, Mr. Silver, would that bring into the district roughly? Is that about $1.5 million?
$1.2 million.
$1.2 million. So $1.2 million. So $1.2 million, I've seen, and I've reluctantly signed a lot of, when I was president, a lot of, what do you call it? Not contracts, but approved, let's say, tabs through with the entire board here that were for, let's say, overtime, teachers, collating books for the summer, ridiculous amounts of money. $50,000 for 5 teachers to collate books in overtime, for students coming into the fall, whereby you could have probably had, 5 volunteers do it, or maybe 1 teacher supervise maybe 5 students. That would make much less to do it. So there's lots of creative ways that the district could leverage the amount of volunteers and also other ways of reducing costs that could easily come up with $1.2 million. And so the other place we could find money is I understand it's great to have more pre-K students coming to the district, which is fantastic, because I really also feel that the earlier we bring students into a learning environment, the better off we will be as a society in the future. However, there are budgets. So you can't disenfranchise one area of the public, such as senior citizens, while, just because you want to, let's say, take in as many preschoolers as possible. So we obviously want to balance that. So if it means taking in less preschoolers, so that we don't have a negative impact on senior citizens and those with fixed income, then maybe that's what we do. Because you can't tell me, or maybe you can try, that the bond alone, and which is what the Chairman Torres was saying was one of the reasons for this increase, is the only thing affecting this increase. I would probably argue that a lot of this increase is probably due to onboarding more pre-K students and other staff increases that we propose, especially during the summer. And quite frankly, I feel that a lot of these overtimes, and the overtimes are ridiculous. I mean, the amount of overtimes, I see administrators and teachers who've increased their salaries over the summer just through extra summer work or overtime throughout the year by 30 to 50%. Ridiculous amounts of overtime being doled out very inefficiently, I feel. So I am not a proponent of a tax increase. Of course, at some point in time, there should be one. But I don't feel that the time is now, because I don't feel as if we've really sharpened our pencils. So those are just a few places where I feel that we could really make a difference. And, no one on this board has ever known me to be a rubber stamp of the administration or anything that happens on this board. I think very logically and think through things. I've seen, many things here. So I think we're doing a great job, but I think we could do a better job. And that's where I stand there.
Mr. Zamar, I do want to
Sure.
make a comment on something that you said, though, relative to the distribution of wealth in Westchester County and Mount Vernon in particular. And I think you raise a very valid point. However, that is a point for our legislators, and I'll tell you why. Part of how state aid is calculated is based on the distribution of wealth in certain communities. And when you have a community that is as densely populated as Mount Vernon, that socioeconomic distribution is skewed. Part of what the governor actually has said is that there has to be a way to adjust how state aid is allocated, because there are clearly districts with uniquenesses like Mount Vernon who should get more state aid. What makes us unique, based on many, if not all, of the surrounding communities, is 17% of our children are eligible for special education services, and that cost is almost double of a general ed student. We also have 10%, the highest in Westchester County, of children who are homeless, and that also comes with different kinds of challenges. So when you look at that percentage of students who have different and diverse learning needs, you have to also look at our responsibility to educate those youngsters as well. So our cost per pupil is high, and our distribution of wealth across the district is skewed. That's part of why it's been so important for us to be a part of the Big Five, because those lobbyists get to carry those kinds of issues to the legislators on our behalf, to argue that it is not fair or equitable, quite frankly, that districts like Mount Vernon have to pass some of those costs on to their taxpayers, when it is not to our doing that we happen to have this densely populated community with students with such diverse needs. But in the interim, this plan really looks at providing students with the kind of educational services they need, regardless to where they are in the continuum between your atypical learner and your general ed or typical learner.
And I applaud that, and it's no fault of anyone's here that, except for possibly the politicians, which we've been working and trying to negotiate with. But no, I was not blaming fault that it's the district's fault that we have such a high cost per student. It is what it is. I was just merely stating the fact that we do have the highest cost per student at some of the, in terms of socioeconomically lowest earners in the district, or in the county, I'm sorry. So that I was just pointing out. So therefore, we have to be very mindful of how we use resources. As the reverends did come up here and say, we have to be very mindful of how we use resources and make sure that we can do it much more efficiently. So anyway, that's my point of view. We have other board members here that might feel differently. The other thing is regarding Rebecca Turner and that being a model school, one of the things that we discussed during the restructuring meeting was that the performing arts school grades were coupled or bunched with the Rebecca Turner school grades. Were we able to separate those to really see where Rebecca Turner stands alone? Because I know that you said it was because of the bid codes, I think, or?
It's not Rebecca Turner, it's Benjamin Turner.
Oh, it's Benjamin Turner, not Rebecca.
Turner. Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Benjamin
All right,
Turner.
fantastic. All right, so that negates that question, so that is there. And then, if anyone else wants to jump in here, I could.
Powers, actually, who served on the committee, wants to.
Sure, then I could
Then
continue later, so that way give somebody else a chance to comment.
He needs a microphone. If we're going to let him talk.
Thank you. I would just like to comment on the point that's been made that the cost per student in Mount Vernon is among the highest in Westchester County. That is indeed true. We looked at this very closely in the audit committee in 2014. And we found, as Dr. Hamilton has said, that the reason that's true in Mount Vernon is indeed because we have the highest percentage of special needs children. But what's not been said, which is critically important, is that when you disaggregate this information, you find that the student that does not have special needs in Mount Vernon is well below the average of Westchester. And that's something we need to put a lot of focus on. And the focus of budget has tirelessly been to reduce cost, to find smarter ways to do things. I don't think anyone on budget would be at all in agreement with Mr. Zamora's comment that not enough attention has been paid to the focus on reducing cost. We have taken tens, we've taken, I don't want to misquote here, especially in a public forum, but a huge amount of focus has gone into this. Significant funds have been found, and those funds have gone to improving the educational process for all of our children, and I think that's really what we need to continue to do. Just one other small point is that in the beginning of this process in 2014, there was frankly low-hanging fruit. We found through the audit committee funds had not been used in some of the bonds. They were then used for emergency repairs, so they actually found their way into the budget. But each year, as we put more and more focus on driving costs down, it does become harder. Anyone that's been in a business knows that there's diminishing returns. So we had great gains. We've had very good gains. That's how we got to the surplus that that Mr. Zamora referred to. It isn't getting easier to do, and we need to think about that as we look into the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to respond to Mr. Powers' statement, there's no way that anyone on the committee, on the budget committee, except for probably the board members, because they get all the tabs and resolutions, can see where to effect some of the savings that I spoke about. Mr. Powers, there's no way for you to see it because you don't see those particular resolutions in terms of the numbers coming through across the desk for such things such as collating books in the summer. Because by the time you get to the budget rounds, right, and you're looking through this, those monies have already been spent, and they're not necessarily part of the budget. They're lumped as maybe in parts of the budget that you can't dissect, right? And so, and there's a lot of that. There's a lot of monies reserved for educational purposes, so on and so forth, that are not dissectable. And so, of course, I don't expect you guys to see that. So I'm not saying at all or inferring that the budget committee has done a poor job. I'm just saying that we could always do better. Do you disagree?
I think what you're saying betrays a lack of understanding of what the budget committee does, to be honest with you.
No, it doesn't at all. But anyway, so if you could foresee those, then you know what, you have X-ray vision, especially at the budget level. But anyway, I will continue to say that regarding the enrollment and going to what you said about the costs for general education students going down, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because I know for just listening to a lot of people in the community, that a lot of people are actually leaving the community, especially general education students whose parents don't feel that there's been enough rigor. So Trustee McCohen just said that, hey, look, a lot of people are staying and we're not really losing that many students. How are we calculating attrition in the district? So for example, just because the numbers stay the same doesn't mean that there's not attrition. Numbers can stay the same simply by people currently in the district opting out and leaving and, let's say, going to private school, and then now more people moving into the district. So it doesn't mean that we don't have attrition. It just means that we may have an influx of students moving into the district. Because I do know that a lot of people are leaving the district. And the other thing is that besides the seniors, you're also taxing people such as myself who, let's say, for example, have kids outside of the district who pay taxes here, okay, and who are doubly taxed. And that's a lot. It's not a few. My last count, there were nearly 3,000 households in Mount Vernon who had kids in private school at one point or another. So therefore, it's a large number, and these people are overtaxed. When you look at properties in Mount Vernon vis-a-vis other districts or other towns, they're just as beautiful. However, the one thing, the common thread is that there's lack of maintenance in most of the homes in Mount Vernon, just because the people simply they can't afford to. By the time they send their kids to other schools for a more rigorous education, by the time they pay the tax and pay the private school tuition, there's just not enough money left. And I hear this argument by parents throughout the north side, south side, east and west of Mount Vernon while campaigning and while speaking to people throughout the years. So again, I'm not saying that we're not doing a good job. I just really feel that we could do a much better job, and we could find $1.2 million in other places rather than increase the levy at this juncture. So anyway, I don't want to beleaguer this, and I don't want to take any much more time. I do have some more questions that I could ask later, but I think I'll leave the floor to somebody else for now. Thank you.
Thank you.
On this topic, can you speak to what a 0% increase can do to the rating?
One of the challenges we've had with our bond rating is that the bond rating companies do not like it when you do not take advantage of all the opportunities to raise money, which is what you're saying. So they would have rated us higher than they did had we increased the taxes every year to the tax cap. We chose not to do that. But I would say one of the offsetting parts of all this is that our debt service is up substantially next year, even less the state aid of 75%, because we have to start paying back that bond.
Borrowing capacity gets impacted.
And our borrowing capacity is impacted as well through what you are saying as well.
So essentially, a tax levy is a balancing act between appeasing the community and making sure that we're protecting ourselves in our rating so that if we need to, we do have the borrowing capacity.
So we just can't borrow at as low a rate as we could if we had taxed more. Yes, it is a balancing act.
So essentially, having a lower rating will cost us more than a minimal tax levy if needed.
It could. I mean, if the interest rate was half a point more because we were not able to get a better rating, yes, it could cost more, especially on a $100 million bond.
So theoretically, an under 1% tax levy is less intrusive or less costly than having the rating hurt us when we need to borrow.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Potentially. This is conjecture, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Mathematical conjecture.
Well, mathematical conjecture, however, what was our rating 4 years ago? Do you recall?
It was in B something.
Okay.
Now it's A something.
Okay, and how much has the rate dropped from B to A?
Well, it's hard to say that because the interest rates have gone up.
Yeah, the markets are different.
Right,
The markets are not the same.
Okay, so
We can't
therefore,
compare it.
so therefore, it's very difficult to calculate what Mr. Trustee Russo is implying.
But we do know that when we went out for the energy performance contract, when we were first envisioning it 3 years ago, 2 years ago, we thought it was going to be about 3% to borrow. It turned out to be 2% to borrow, short-term borrowing being even less. And we were told by Moody's and Standard & Poor's that we would have done better, somewhat better,
It's hard to calculate that today if we had taken advantage of revenue opportunities that we did have.
How much money of the bond have we not borrowed yet?
We borrowed all, we invest what we're not using.
Okay, so therefore, this could not, a change in the rating right now could not affect our borrowing rate because we already borrowed it.
No, we haven't taken out the major loan yet. We're still on temporary until we have more.
Okay, so how much of it have we taken out that could be potentially affected by the
Maybe
increase in rates?
$50 million, perhaps, about half of it.
Okay, about half, and not 100 million.
No.
Okay, I just want to check all these numbers because people make statements and it's an attempt to maybe scare people to vote one way or another. So now we just chopped it by half. So it's not 2% or 1% or 0.5% of 100 million, but it could potentially be 0.5% of 50 million. That's just the start. Not even dissect it even
Right,
further.
but by the end of the 18-19 school year, we will have spent the majority of the money.
Right, okay. So
Probably almost
so
all
it
of
wouldn't
it.
have the full effect of the 0.5% on the 100 million.
That's correct.
Correct, okay. That's it for now.
This is going to fall.
Any other questions?
I have,
McGowan?
well, one of my questions was about the bond, when the debt was, the next draw was, right, and the refi, like you talked about, and the impact on the credit rating. I mean, this is a business, right? A school district is just a very, very, very big business, and we're in the business of educating children, a lot of children. And just like any business, you have to, we can't cut our budget in half. We can't increase it by 50%. Either of those would be, hugely irresponsible. And it's our job collectively, the board and the administration, to come up with a business plan that works for this business. And that's what the administration does every year with input from the committee. And, I mean, I'll just say my sense is I'm actually very shocked it was that low. I know that that the proposed budget is as low an increase as it is. I mean, I know our state aid is less than we anticipated.
Correct.
There was fear it might even be worse at one point, and then it was supposed to be better, and now it is what it is. But if you look at the track record of what this particular administration has done in the 3 years I've been here, the 4 years total, I think a 0.9% increase over 4 years to see a 33% increase in graduation rate and a 10 to 30% increase in every test score, and all the schools coming, being bumped up levels from where they were a few years ago, that seems to me a very good return on our investment, frankly. I have one other question.
Prior to, if I can just add to that, in a business, you need to project and enact policies that won't hurt you going forward. So in comparing what a 0% tax levy will do to the rating and what that cost could be offset by a 0.89% tax levy now, that's what a business does. They have to have these kind of mathematical projections in order to protect the business.
And the other thing too, just from a practical standpoint as an educator, and I hear the business philosophy in the business approach, but the fact of the matter is we're in the business of educating children, and our public, the people who live in Mount Vernon, those are our clients. Those are, it's not like parents are sending us the neediest kids they have at home and keeping all the other ones at home. We have to educate all of our children. And while it is true that there may be children who are leaving the district, we are also finding, because of some of the work that is happening in the area of special ed, people are coming into the district in order to receive those services. So it's a very delicate balancing act. And ultimately, at the end of the day, what we're presenting here is really about being fiscally responsible to the taxpayers and recognizing that we have children in our community who are in serious need of a quality educational program. And that's what we're doing. Rome wasn't built in a day, and it's going to take us time to get to the point where we are competitive with Bronxville, but clearly we're on the right track. And in order to stay on that right track, we need the resources in order to do that. So we're asking the board to support this kind of budget that ensures that we have the resources to continue on the trajectory. Now, if we don't, you get to hold this administration accountable, but you can't not give us the resources and then penalize us for not getting the results that we are telling you this research tells us that we should be getting.
The only issue that I have is, again, as a business, okay, and I've never held a job in my life. I've always had my own business. So as a business, I go through these exercises all the time. But I can't expect to onboard, let's say, more pre-K schoolers continuously. I know a lot of them we have through government aid and state aid and also other grants and stuff. But maybe we slow down in that area or some other areas. So what I'm saying is that we have to, again, not to say that the administration hasn't done a great job. I feel that you guys have, for the record. I feel that all of our teachers have done an amazing job here in this district, and yes, we are making improvements, but we have to look at the entire spectrum. So again, maybe we don't grow that aspect of the district as quickly so that we can, ease off the burden on the other side, because that's all you hear about and people feel it. Yeah, I don't feel it, sure, okay, but I don't represent the majority of people in Mount Vernon. So I'm not going to turn around and say, well, that's not my problem, right? We're here, everybody, yeah, tax increase. It's so easy for everyone to say. So all I'm saying is that we should take a better look at it, because, yeah, of course, anybody could do a better job. You talk about, hey, yes, well, if you guys don't give us the money, don't complain about the grades or the scores or, that we didn't do a good job. Anybody could do a better job with even more money. It's always easy to do a better job with more money. I could do a better job in my house if I had more money. But at some point, this is what we have, and we work with what we have. And by the way, $250 million, $250 million for this school district, it's not peanuts. I know if you look at the percentage on the pie, how much of it is used for, let's say, salaries and instruction versus facilities, it's like 93-7. Right? So it clearly tells us where we could cut. Now, I know a lot of it is, salaries, we really can't cut that, but there are ways that we could reduce the way we do overtime, and I'm specifically targeting that because I've seen it in the past 3 years here. The waste in overtime, it's ridiculous. All right, so you have the waste in overtime, you have the growth of our pre-K, let's slow that down, and we could easily offset, $1.2 million.
Okay, is that it?
That's all. Thank you.
I mean, do you want to talk about the overtime point since it's been talked about? I mean, we have contracts with teachers.
The matter is, contract overtime, it has nothing to do with the contracts. It
set the rates, though. The contract
sets the rates, but you don't have to use them. We could use volunteers on a lot of these things that we do.
Oh, no, we're not. We're not able to violate the contractual agreement by, that would be an easy solution. But we're not able to violate contract, for instance. We can't offer work to non-union folks when the union recognizes that title. So
free work is volunteer.
We could do volunteer.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Volunteer is what I said.
But even cutting back on the overtime, and I agree with you in some regards, the overtime is a bit much, and we are looking closely at that.
Do we know what that number is in the overtime in terms of dollar value?
Not off the top of my head. I don't know that.
Can we find that out, Mr. Silver? Okay, I'd love to know the overall dollar value of the overtime. I'm not saying that we could get rid of all overtime. That's ridiculous. I mean, we're always going to have some overtime. I'd like to know what it is.
All right, maybe that's an answer for another forum.
Well, speaking to a point that Trustee Zamore made regarding the growth of preschool or pre-K, this is another business model perspective, whereas the amount of money you put into pre-K to get the students to where you need them to be is definitively offset by what you'll have to spend on them later.
Exactly.
The best chance we have of getting kids on grade level by the time they're in third grade, meaning and fourth grade, meaning that you won't need all the remedial services,
Right.
You won't need all the reading specialists. The sooner we get them, the more likely we will be able to close those gaps.
So stunting the growth on the pre-K program will cost more in the long run and cost the taxpayer more than the minimal increase in the tax levy currently being proposed.
That is a school of thought, yes.
School of thought, conjecture still.
I mean, this has been the focus of the 2020 vision the whole time, is it goes the whole way from birth to high school. You have to go the whole way, because there's no point in having high schools of success if you do nothing, from ages 4 to 12 to get them ready to be successful. You're never going to have a competitive model.
And I agree with Trustee McCohen on that. We can't do nothing. Are we doing nothing when it comes to pre-K? Okay, so I'm asking not to do nothing. I'm just saying slow down a bit and maybe do a little bit less this year and maybe have smaller increments. That's all. Not to do nothing. And again, people could always take words and skew them and turn them around so it seems like, oh my God, the sky's falling, Chicken Little. I'm just saying. I hear them all. So other people don't hear them, I'm here to clarify it.
Okay, is that it for the presentation? Any other questions, comments? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
We have a speaker that didn't get a chance to speak. I think it's Jeff Monroe. If you have the opportunity to come up and speak.
He came in.
Thank you, honorable trustees, community. Thank you for accommodating me at this late part of the agenda. So I want to first, express regret for having missed some of that presentation. I was not even expecting it. And Dr. Hamilton, if at some point when it does arrive on the website, I'd like to suggest a more efficient streaming strategy rather than Facebook, only because, the obvious recent developments of Facebook's, violations. 87 million users have been violated in terms of their privacy, and there's no way to get a streaming service out of Facebook if you don't have Facebook apps downloaded to your phone. So if the website could be utilized as a streaming strategy, I'd like to see that and archived for media. That'd be a much better solution, more safe, and I think community-friendly solution. So going forward from that, I'm looking forward to seeing the presentation on the website. I'd also like to see a demonstration of the cultural rigor in terms of the curriculum. I don't know if I've missed that in the presentation, but I'd like to know that whatever we're spending on actual academic rigor equals the needs, the social, cultural, and psychosocial needs of our children. We don't really have much dialogue on that in this district. And quite frankly, it's old news by now in terms of the amount of times I've come up here and talked about multicultural education. I don't know if that's been addressed at all in terms of our policy. I haven't seen any public forums on it, and I'm sure after I sit back down, there's going to be some kind of last word that someone's going to get. But this is not the forum for that dialogue. So, and it's quite frankly old news now. Everybody's talking about Wakanda forever, but very few people even understand the actual dynamics of Africa on the world and even Mount Vernon today. So that's. I'd also like to talk about the trustees' responsibility for appointing a cable television advisory committee member. Trustee McConnell was diligent enough to address it in the fall, but I haven't heard anything since. We are addressing this issue because it is, again, an important aspect of this community's media function to properly manage our cable television advisory structure. And of course, the contract is close to manifestation sometime soon, and yet we have no school district representation. So if we could address that, I'd appreciate it. Thanks.
I would be glad to address that. We actually have two members of the staff who have been very active on that committee, and sometimes the only folks at that meeting, to the point that they resigned 2 weeks ago. So we are revisiting that, but Donna Jackson served on that committee. Jeff Costello, one of our school teachers, high school teachers, served on that committee, and they have been faithful members of that committee. So we have been very well represented.
Yeah, and I would affirm that, and I agree. I just want to see going forward an old issue of the trustee appointees to the committee, be forthcoming. And quite frankly, as the board chair, I was not aware that they resigned. So that's another contradiction that I'd like to speak to.
That actually just happened. The board is just hearing it for the first time, actually.
Yeah, I didn't hear that. Interesting. Well, thank you for the information, but we'd hopefully, we can get representation, pretty expeditiously. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Monroe. Right now, we'll do committee reports. Trustee Zamora, any committee reports for you?
Sure. We had a restructuring meeting, and very well put on, by the way, Dr. Hamilton. I thought the administration
Thank you.
put on a very informative meeting. Was that a public meeting?
Yes.
It was? Okay. I guess it wasn't advertised, I didn't really see many people from the public there. But it was a very well put together meeting and very informative. We had many presentations made by various administrative members. The major concern that I brought up
Can you
was
speak
the
a little more into your mic?
was the academic rigor, the need to make sure that it's present and that it's lively, especially with the renaming of the high school of choice versus, 3 different academic high schools, one of excellence or a magnet, one of for performing arts, and of course the general education high school with the International Baccalaureate program. We must not fool ourselves because, it makes us feel better to think that if we lower the bar for students just to make them feel good and just to get them to pass, that's a good thing for the community, or it's a good thing to,
Is this
maybe.
part of your committee report?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Because there's consequences that will bear. So one of the things that we discussed was to make sure that we implement rigor through feeder schools, such as the superintendent mentioned, to make sure that we increase the rigor so that eventually the schools will get up to speed. Because, when we first come on board, when we onboard it, maybe everybody won't be up to speed because it's going to be something new. We're going to have new experiences, new classes, and maybe everyone won't be up to speed. But that we do have a plan, the administration does have a plan to increase the rigor and to make sure that it is substantial enough to be recognized as a school of excellence. The Mount Vernon High School with the International Baccalaureate program, I have more doubts that that program will survive successfully there, simply because environment is very important when it comes to educational excellence. You have to have excellence in environment that goes hand in hand with academic excellence. So Mount Vernon High School right now has a lot of challenges still. And while we've made great progress, we still have a lot of challenges. I just wonder, how many parents who have kids who are academically successful will put their children in an environment that sometimes is very challenging. I hear tons of accounts still of bullying, of very foul language in the hallways, of things that do not represent an atmosphere of academic superiority. So we have a lot to work on there, and I understand that the superintendent or the administration doesn't want Mount Vernon High School to sort of like be the default dumb school, which I don't think it could ever become, because I believe that there's enough brilliance in the community to support a pretty good general education. However, I also don't want to see an international baccalaureate program. Here we're applying for it and we're hoping to get it, and for it to be taken away in a very short time from us if we don't, let's say, have the success levels that they expect. So I just don't want to set us up for failure there. So I just want it to be more fully considered as you roll it out. But again, we had a very fruitful meeting. It was very well attended by the administration and a few board members, and I feel that we're on the right path.
So what are the next steps?
Well, Mr. Superintendent, why don't you tell us?
The next steps will be contingent on what happens with this budget and whether or not we are able to fully implement the 3 key components of the 2020 vision around early education, the reconfiguration of the high schools, and then ultimately the onboarding of the 3 theme-based high schools. We are well situated and well prepared to roll out the next phase of the implementation of the plan. The restructuring committee saw the plan. And that was also done, by the way, in collaboration with the construction timetable, the construction committee and their timetable. So as long as we stay on course with the construction plan and we're able to bring the current Mandela building on board and we redistrict, we'll then be able to fully integrate our schools and reconfigure them with neighborhood students in their pre-K through 8 configuration.
I'm glad you mentioned in terms of the next steps being a little bit contingent on the passing of this budget, especially the increase of the $1.2 million. Can we break down, perhaps, Mr. Silver, what could, how the 1.2 million would break down in terms of the different programs? Like how much would go towards which, I guess, if you break it down into some type of subcategories in terms of how much will go towards the STEAM school, how much will go towards performing arts, how much will be for pre-K early education. Is there any way to break that down?
The budget increase is $5 million, $5.8 million. I don't see how we could say that 1.2 would be specific to any program. I think we would have to need to discuss.
Okay, so we don't really know that how the 1.2 increase affects any program in particular. So the superintendent's, I believe, referring to just generally if the budget succeeds or not, the overall budget.
Overall.
Okay,
Overall.
got it. Thank you.
Related to that, that's a good question, though, is what is the public going to see? Do they see this that we see, or do they see some summary version of this
They see a
on the
summary,
website?
see a summary version of this. The full spreadsheet, however, is available, but in terms of what the public will see, they will see a summary sheet that has revenue, expenses, tax levy, and I'm missing one area.
The major expense categories, fund balance.
And the fund balance, that's the other area I was missing.
And I know you're doing the Q&A, I guess I'm still talking about the budget, sorry. But I know you're doing the Q&A on Thursday. Is that the only opportunity for the public to ask questions?
We're actually planning a Saturday morning presentation as well between now and May, I forget what the date is, but we are doing a Saturday morning presentation for those folks who may prefer the Saturday morning coffee klatch.
Okay.
Okay.
And next week. Next Tuesday will be.
Right, at the meeting, right.
Trustee Russo, Budget Committee?
I'm sorry, one more question for Mr. Silver. Where in the budget would I even find overtime for teachers? What line item is that?
2110, after the salary codes, we would show overtime for each category of employee. You'd find it in the 1600 codes for custodial, in the 2100 codes for teachers. TAs also have it. There's clerical overtime, so every category of employee has an overtime.
Gotcha, 2100. All right, thank you.
All right, that's it? Okay. Trustee Russo?
Yes, I'm all done. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Russo.
Any committee reports? No? Trustee Ning?
The Education Committee will meet this coming Monday, the 16th. We did not meet this week.
Okay. Trustee Jaros?
I trust that Trustee Zamora has said enough.
Okay. Trustee White?
Yes, I'm going to defer to the Director of Facilities, Michael Policio, today.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
For those who don't know me, my name is Michael Policio. I'm the Superintendent of Buildings and Grounds. So much of this report, and it's going to be a brief synopsis, a short report tonight, has been covered in all the presentations that have been before us. So at this time of the year, it's very exciting in the school district as far as facilities is concerned, because we're starting to ramp up for the summer work that we're about to embark on, and it is going to be a sight to see. So we are going to begin work to implement the 2020 vision as far as getting buildings ready to accept seventh grade, to accept pre-K. At Columbus, Holmes, Parker, Lincoln, and Grimes, we're doing work in science rooms, and we're getting work done to accept the full-day pre-K in all the buildings. For instance, at Parker, over this last vacation, we took 2 of the pre-K rooms to get a little bit of a head start on it. We did a full abatement. We did new ceilings, new floors, new lighting. It just is some of the work that when we have an opportunity to do these works on our breaks when there's no kids, we take advantage of it at every turn. As the superintendent has said many times, this type of work, this massive construction and transformation of the district, we'll be asking everybody to partake in this a little bit, and there'll be some inconveniences on everybody's part. And so far, the principals and the administrators have been more than supportive. As Mr. Silver mentioned, the Williams School has a big concentration this year. We've already done renovations in the playground, renovations in the cafeteria. We're going to renovate science rooms, they won't be getting 7th grade next year, but we'll start, that's all part of the SED submission. We're going to renovate an auditorium there. We are going to have new mechanicals, AC in some of the sections, basically the auditorium, upgrades to emergency lighting, upgrades to the alarm system, both fire and burglar, and we're going to upgrade 2 bathrooms in that school as well. We also talked about some district-wide stuff that we're doing. Excuse me one second, I'm sorry. Some district-wide initiatives. So in order to cut down on overtime, as Mr. Zamora had mentioned, we are looking into outsourcing some of the programs that we currently do, some of the tasks that we do, like snow removal, and that is it's a big part of our overtime budget. So we're looking into outsourcing some of that stuff to cut down on custodial overtime. We've also implemented many different software programs to automate the systems that have been, just long, arduous systems over the years, like School Dude for facility use, inventory control, maintenance requests. And we're also, this year, we're fully implemented our BMS system, which is our building management system, so we have complete climate control in all the buildings. We've also instituted GPS tracking in all our district vehicles that will help with speed control throughout the district as far as driving is concerned, with engine diagnostics, safety for the drivers and for the community at large. So the implementation of technology and construction as we have it coming forward it's just an exciting time for the district, and we are ready to really move forward and bring the 2020 vision to light for the superintendent and for the district at large. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Felicio.
Can I ask a facilities question, which is, what is the status of the pool being open? Thank you.
So I'm proud to announce that the pool has passed the DOH inspection, and we are open for business. It was a long time coming. One of the major renovations that is coming forward is the Phase 3 of the pool. This year, we will address the balcony to make it safe for spectators to, right now, we have an old railing system that doesn't meet code. We're going to bring that up to code so we can open up the balcony. But the pool is at a constant 82 degrees. The filter system is running well. The humidity is down in the pool area. The deck is clean. The instruction is ready to go. And as far as I know, the superintendent is ready to be the first person in the pool.
I actually bought a bathing suit this weekend.
So what are the plans in terms of structural plans for the pool?
Yeah,
I know
for swimming
that we had a
lessons and stuff.
swimming lesson, swim team, and I know we were supposed to have this already by December, but of course, obviously, these Department of Health inspections took some time. So what, do you know the curriculum plans or the program plans?
So unfortunately, Mr. Zamora, that is one thing that B&G is not responsible for.
I figured as much, but I figured if I asked you, maybe somebody would jump in.
No, I don't know the answer.
We're actually putting together the schedule now on when we'll be open, when open swim will occur, the lifeguard training. We actually may be close to completing that schedule. Actually, I'll check in with Mr., help me with his name, Ruliano, and perhaps I can share that with you in the mailing this week.
I have a question. I visited some schools, a particular Williams school, And some of the people said, well, I said, we only have 2 painters in the district, correct? We only have 2 painters?
That's correct, Madam President.
So they said that maybe the staff doesn't mind painting some of the rooms.
So as we...
Talk about volunteering, so maybe we can...
As we talk about quite often, and Dr. Campbell can help me with this, I'm sure, is we run into contractual issues all the time with people that are working out of title that do certain things. So we are thinking up and coming up with innovative ways that we can get the painters to be working. And as long as they are working, and sometimes on an overtime basis, at that point, it gives us more flexibility to allow other members of the custodial and maintenance staff to do some painting as well. So we're working with the union to try to strike a balance on that. Obviously, we have 18 buildings, and 2 painters, or 3 painters actually, it is not enough to cover the building. I mean, painting a district is like painting a bridge. When you finish one end, you got to start again at the other end and keep going. So it lives in perpetuity.
So would it have to be custodians? Because I'm talking TAs and...
Yeah, that stuff gets a little problematic because of insurances, because of different, there are different legalities. Maybe Mr. Kristoff can talk about that at some point, or, like I said, Dr. Campbell, we do run into some issues when people other than the painters are doing painting. But we try, we come up with every angle we can possibly come up with to try to make that work.
Okay, thank you.
We'll work with him, trying to get
All right, thanks a lot, Mr. Felicio.
Can I answer a question that was previously asked?
Sure.
From Trustee Zamora regarding the assessments and market value? No, yeah, it's okay, Mike. So this is one of my areas of expertise, but in the city, and it is incredibly different from Westchester, but from what I can briefly gather, the assessment is approximately 1.964% of your market value. So a $10,000 assessment translates to a $509,000 market value on your house. Now, that's not taxable. That's not your taxes. Your taxes are approximately 1.2% of your a 1.2 multiple of your assessment, translating to about a 2.3 to 4% of your market value, if that helps.
But you don't know if that applies to Westchester.
That's for Mount Vernon.
Right, so that is greatly different from what Mr. Silver just said, because those numbers were at the 16 to 20,000 level of assessment of homes that were averaging about $500 to $600,000 in the Devonia.
It's exactly the same.
No, he's saying 10%. He's saying 10,000. Just said 10,000. You said 16 to 20,000. All right, forget it.
Well, that would just make the impact even less, if that's
Correct.
true. Way less.
Correct.
Well, not necessarily. It'd make the impact on the higher end even more. If the low end of 10,000 is a home whose value is let's say 590,000, then it's 16. Okay, no worries.
Okay.
And again, there are multiple aspects in taxes in Westchester, such as county, city, sewer, school, library, which differ from New York City. So these are just preliminary figures.
Okay. Thank you for that information.
You're welcome.
Trustee McCowan, any committee reports?
For the Family and Community Engagement, Trustee Williams couldn't be here tonight, but I missed the opening. Sorry, did we plug the event on Saturday, I assume? Or Friday night? Friday night or Saturday night? The awards dinner? Saturday night, right?
Saturday night, reception begins at 5:30, show begins at 7.
Excellent. I'll be in Boston, but everyone should go if you can. Sorry, I won't be here. For policy, up for first reading tonight, which we will not actually read, it's 63 pages of business office policies that have been in the works for a few months, which is going to replace, believe it or not, even a much longer set of policies that haven't been touched in the last 10 to 20 years. But they'll be up for first reading for anyone to review, and it's a lot, so I would suggest we wait 2 meetings to do the second reading and adopt, but because I know our next meeting is just a week from now. So if anyone has any questions about them, feel free to contact the policy committee.
Thank you. Trustee Torres, you presented your budget, so thank you. I have, the Special Education Advisory Council meets next Wednesday, April 18th, at the Rebecca Turner from 6 to 8, and our topic this month is autism awareness. Hope to see you guys there. We did a food pantry last Saturday at Parker School, which was a pretty good turnout, so we're going to continue to do that. I think there's another one on the 18th at Benjamin Turner, and another one the first Tuesday of May, and which I'm going to ask Trustee...
First Saturday.
Yeah, first Saturday of May, and I'm going to ask Trustee Jaros if she would chair that, because I'm not going to be available. Would you do that? That's the first Saturday in May. All right, thank you. So that's it for committee reports.
I have one more question regarding the budget. Mr. Silver, what percentage of overtime that is approved in the budget do you think is increased by the actual overtime that's been approved by throughout the year? So I'm looking at these numbers here, and the numbers in the approved budget are at times anywhere from 500 to 4,000% less than what's actually spent. So where are we finding all that extra money?
We have authority to transfer salaries as we need to. So when positions aren't filled, or when salaries are under what we need, we are permitted by board action to transfer the money.
I'm ready to say that.
Codes to cover those. We do not know ahead of time how much overtime we want to need. Much of it, particularly in the custodial area, is because of emergencies and special programs. Most of the teaching codes don't have mostly overtime per se. They're built into many of the salary codes, as I just mentioned to you. So it's hard to identify those, except in the administrative codes, they are identified in terms of the summer contractual obligations of the administration. But the question is, we're permitted to transfer the money as we need to for overtime.
Okay, great. And so we take that money usually from salaries that were not filled?
Yes.
How much money in salaries were not filled in last year's, we don't know this current year's budget yet, because the year is not over until, we go to fiscal July 1st? June 30th, right? So what do you anticipate would be the total amount of dollars of salaries that were not filled?
Well, we know that 5 librarian positions were never filled this year. But
is that technically our money even?
Librarian
School libraries,
Yeah,
okay,
school
not
libraries.
the public library, okay.
And we know that among all the schools, there are some positions which we've been unable to fill, which are where we have substitute teachers or other teachers covering. So it's hard to say what hasn't been filled, what has been filled, but every class has been covered one way or the other. We also have expenses related to professional development that are hard to predict exactly what they will be.
I know, I'm just asking how much money is left in the pot, that's all.
We don't know that yet.
How much was left in the pot last year?
About $2 million was left over at the end of the year.
All right, thank you.
And I also would like to say that a lot of the after-school programs are grants that Dr. Ben Conroy had
Where,
received.
She does a great job.
So
Thank
we
you.
have a lot of the after-school programs. The overtime is all grant money.
No, I know that. Thank you.
Okay, so is that it for committee reports? Okay. Motion to enter into executive session. We have no minutes to accept, okay. Motion to enter into executive session.
So moved. Second.
Trustee Torres?
purpose?
Executive session this evening is to discuss matters related to special education.
And settlement.
Oh, that's right. And the in particular, the history of a particular person or persons, the employment history.
How long?
20 minutes.
20 minutes, we should return.
Who was the second?
Let's see. 20 minutes to 9.
Did we ever vote?
All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? The motion carries.
Okay.
So moved.
All in favor?
Wait, we need a second.
Second, we have a second?
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Did you get that?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opportunity for board members to remove anything from the consent agenda?
Just give me 1 second, please. I'm trying to pull it up. Where is the meeting?
We have anything separate to vote on? Just a...
You know which one you're looking for, Mr. McGowan?
I found it, hang on.
Okay.
Not going to change orders. Not going.
Are you going to go to the pin relays?
No.
No.
No, it's too much of budget.
Yeah.
I'd like to, but it's just not me.
Never mind, it's okay.
Motion to approve consent agenda?
Motion.
Trustee Russo? Trustee Jaros?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
Abstention.
Trustee Zamor abstains. The motion carries.
Any unfinished business? New business?
Yes, under new business, we have, as I mentioned earlier, a lengthy list of the set of new business office policies. That's policies governing things like budgets and writing checks and approving expenses and a variety of other related things. And I will make a motion that we waive the first reading due to length, but they are there for anyone to read if they would like.
Okay, thank you.
Second.
Second.
Trustee Russo? All those in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Trustee Torres, second.
Second.
Trustee White?
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you all for coming.
Abstain?
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.